In the sales process, there's always quite a few different leverage points, and it's natural normally for people to focus further up the funnel. They're looking at lead to first meeting to opportunity, those types of conversion points. But just as important is the one from some sort of technical validation of the product through to close. It's a point in the process where resources can be heavy on our side as the vendor. We're actually allocating people to handhold and work with prospects over quite a bit of time. It's also got a lot of scrutiny, right? If you've got a small number of POVs kicking off every quarter, then often that gets reported to the board. Senior management want to know how it's doing and what's converting and what's not. And there's definitely good ways and bad ways to run that POV process, which is why I wanted to invite Alexei Rubinstein onto the podcast. He is the VP of Sales Engineering and Customer Success at Morphisec, and we're going to be talking today about the POV process. He's been running SE organizations in cyber for 12 years, and he's built POV, POC processes at 5 different companies over that time. So in this episode, we talk about how CyberDonut can improve their results by changing how they do their POV process and how they get more deals through to closed won. I'm Andrew Monahan, and this is the Cybersecurity Go-to-Market podcast, where we tackle the question, how can CyberDonut get to 10 million in ARR by the end of 2025? All right, so Alexei, welcome to the podcast. What we're doing, to remind everyone, is we're saving CyberDonut. CyberDonut has to get to $10 million of ARR by the end of 2025. Everyone can follow along in the progress. All the numbers are there quarter to quarter on cyberdonut.com. That's CYBR donut, DONUT.com. There's no E in cyber in the CyberDonut URL. So you can follow along right there. So the situation, the update is that we're here in the middle of November 2024. We're halfway through Q4. On the advice of some people, Bill Wallace has upgraded his CRO. He's brought in Bob Bruce, who is an experienced CRO. And Bob has been spending the last couple of weeks looking at the numbers, figuring out what's going on, assessing his team, all the rest of it. And one of the things that stuck him straight between the eyes was that the conversion rate from POV to close is hovering around about 50%. I think last quarter was at 56. Before that, it was at 49, something like that. It's not good, right? Looking at that and saying, okay, we've got scarce resources. We're putting them in to try to win these POVs, and yet only half of them are ending up closing. So a priority right now for Bob, as he's looking at trying to hit these numbers next year, is this needs to be fixed. So we're bringing you in as an advisor to say, all right, you've run a few POVs in your time. What might be some of the things to look at? So let me ask you a very specific question. As he's assessing what actually is going on, where would you encourage him to start looking to try and figure out why is this such a low conversion rate?
Yeah, I think the reality is that you need to look at the stage before you get into a POV or a discussion about a POV with the customer. The qualification, the essentially the positioning of your product and the qualification of the opportunity should build to a POV. And I'll put an asterisk here, maybe not only a POV, maybe there are other ways to get beyond that technical validation phase. But it really lies in the qualification of the opportunity. Is it the right timing? Is the customer has the resources to invest into a POV right now? Did we align the expectations, the success criteria? Did we discuss all of those things? And that's on the technical side, but also on the commercial side, is there a budget? Is it this year initiative or is it a 2027 initiative? In which case we could do a POV, but why we do POV now if we'll need to do another POV in 2027 as example, right?
So spoken like a true SE where you're putting the blame on the AE or the salespeople for not doing proper qualification, right? I see where you're going with this.
You know what? I'll actually say that the qualification or the positioning phase should equally be owned by the SE and the AE. And it's, yes, there is some work on the AE side to do, no doubt, and kind of orchestrating and making sure that the commercial aspects of the deal are aligned, etc., and the budget is there, and if not, understanding how budget can be created and timing, etc. But the qualification is equally owned by the SE and by AE. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I joke a little bit. I mean, I feel like there's the business qualification, but there's also the technical qualification.
Yeah.
Making sure that we're getting into deals that we can actually win because the integrations or the things we have to coexist with or their feature needs to hit the goals are all there. They're not, on the roadmap, for example. So
Right.
there definitely has to be the right sort of scrutiny, I guess, in partnership, right? You need to make sure the two are working well together.
Yeah, and it's about mapping the right personas on the customer side and kind of sending the different people on our end, the SE to discuss the technical elements and the AE to maybe to chat with the decision maker, with the economic buyer in that process. And I think setting up the expectations about what is going to happen in a POV, what they're going to see, what is the scope of that POV, the methodology that the customer is going to be using to test that technology, whatever it is, on-premise appliance or a SaaS solution, doesn't matter. What is the testing methodology? Make sure that whatever they're planning to test is something that we can actually deliver, and it's something we actually do. Or to your point, if it's something on the roadmap, then maybe it's worth for us to actually slow roll it and not push for a POV if we're not ready, right? Especially in a startup environment where you see the shiny logo and you go blind about everything. Oh, Bank of America wants to talk to us. Okay, but do you deliver what they're actually looking to get instead of value from your product?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I've seen, and I've been guilty of this as well in the past, is, especially in early stage, you're not exactly flooded with opportunities usually, right? So when you get someone who's willing to go to do some sort of technical validation, this is a good thing, right? I've got a deal. I think it's a deal. It's moving down the pipeline. There's usually some pressure saying we're not getting enough POCs or POVs. So good news is we've got one, right? And sometimes the rigor can kind of go away a little bit. I'm wondering if you've got any tips to help people who feel like that's happening to, I don't know, create a safe zone for people to actually say, look, I know we want to get more POVs, but this one's just not ready yet.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. In an environment where you don't have pipeline and you kind of jump on any opportunity, you cannot say no to anything that comes your way. But that honestly leaves a lot of room for luck, and luck is part of the strategy in sales, but it's not something you can rely on heavily. I think that making sure that, again, it goes back to qualification. If there is no project or budget or the timing is not right, but you still want to do a POV because you have no other POVs at all, and maybe it's very selfish, maybe you even want to use it as a kind of vehicle for feedback, and you know that there is no deal at the end of that process, you may still want to do it, but you need to be transparent internally for the potential outcomes of this. And if you still want to try and get a deal out of it, it probably means that you need to be ready, or your CEO primarily need to be ready to provide significant concessions to make that happen, even though you may think that your technology is the best thing that happened since SpaceX.
And that is the best thing that happened in a while.
I'm really excited about all that space technology. So
Yes, I like that though. You got to be transparent though. You got to. I think that maybe less experienced people might be tempted to kid themselves along a little bit, right? And they want to show that they're making progress. If you, especially as a seller, you want to show that things are going. But I think these are these moments where you have to be the adult in the room and say, look, we the company, we have to make a choice. We probably won't have a deal, but there might be some benefits to going through this as a trial just to see how our POV process works. Yeah, I get that, right? But great point, though. You don't want it to be on the board deck as a forecasted deal. just because you went through a POV with them. All right, Alexei, let's get to know you a little bit better. We've talked about some business things. Let's talk about you. I have a list of 49 questions here. The good news is I won't ask you 49. I am going to spin the random wheel of greatness. And, just so you know, this is a high-tech spinning wheel. It's powered by who knows what version of AI, probably a bit of Claude and Maud and Gemini and OpenAI and who knows what in there, just to make sure we get completely random questions. So I'm going to spin the wheel and let's see what the first number is. Here we go. All right, number 32. How did you first make money as a kid?
Great question, Andrew. I don't know, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but my first kind of job I actually allowed to make money is in a campaign of a very right-wing oriented government official back in Israel. In one of his election campaigns, I think I was maybe 9 or 10, just handing out collateral and things of that nature, but it was good money, and I don't think I really cared at the time about the politics, so...
I can't imagine you understood much about the politics when you were 9, 10 years old.
Not much, for sure. Not enough, for sure.
Not enough, for sure, yeah.
It was good money, so no complaints.
And there was no qualms with the politician pulling in a kid to go and do work for him?
No. It was quite some years ago, so less strict policies around child abuse and work labor, etc. I didn't work difficult hours, but yeah, it was fun.
All right, let's spin the wheel again and see what we get. Oh, number 2. So, what is a embarrassing, memorable, or funny moment that you've had in your sales work life?
Oh, wow. I think I actually have an idea or example for one that maybe includes all three. One of my trips when I used to work at former Soviet Union countries as a sales engineer was to Uzbekistan. And so one of our customers made us kind of go and have a very, very long dinner that included a lot of alcohol, which very quickly led to us going back to our hotel all together and staying in a swimming pool until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whatever, all together with the customer, right? First time we meet them. And the problem there was that we actually had a flight at 5 a.m. And at 3 a.m. I wrapped up the swimming pool, shenanigans, went to my room and fell asleep on the bed. And I woke up from my boss trying to wake me up together with three of the room service folks at the hotel because we were about to be late to the flight. Basically, he was shaking me up. So yeah, that was kind of a funny, embarrassing moment. Never got back to that country again. No, I'm just kidding.
I think a lot of people have that moment somewhere in your work life where you get hit like that, right? It's just things with customers or whatever just get a little bit out of hand, and you're like, oh my god, I still got work to do the next day.
Yep. Yeah, or catch a flight.
Or catch a flight in this time. All right, let me spin again and see what we get. $47. What is the story behind you getting your first job in cybersecurity?
Well, it's kind of part of the story of many folks back in Israel who go through the Israeli Defense Forces. So I served in a technological unit back in the Israeli Defense Forces, which kind of opens the path and the gate to landing a cybersecurity or technological role. And so kind of right of military, I was 21, 22, was able to land an integration and systems engineer role, basically in a vendor that did cybersecurity and IT security systems. And yeah, that just kind of happened, but thanks to the military service. I think in a nutshell, that's the short version.
I've interviewed a lot of people from Israel. Actually, I've never once heard someone say their route was through the military in Israel. It seems like that's what everyone does there.
Yep. Yep.
They must have a really good recruiting system to get everyone into the right divisions inside the military and then get them out into vendors. It's certainly impressive.
Yeah, they have a very advanced system to vet you out and basically plug you into the best place that the military can benefit out of you, but then also at the end of that road, you have a line of sight to, taking your own benefit out of it.
No kidding. In fact, today, I'm going to date this podcast. The announcement was that Wiz has bought Daz. So 2 cyberstarts companies, 2 Israeli-based cybersecurity companies.
Amazing.
So the mechanism is working, let's say.
100%.
I've used the phrase POV, Alexei. Now, I've heard different things. I've heard POVs, POCs, trials, all sorts of different things. I feel like this is a step that we might want to call technical validation. I think you used the words already, but we seem to default to saying, well, let's do the POC. Is that something you see a lot where people just assume that's what we're going to want to do? And is there any way to kind of avoid it sometimes?
Yeah, well, I think the industry doesn't have a standard terminology. I certainly agree with you, and I used that early on, that what we do is a technical validation. And at least as I look at it, the terminology, whether it's a POV or a trial or a POC, really depends on the product. If it's something that is really new, mind-blowing, it might be a concept that you're trying to prove. You're not actually, there should be value, always, period. But it's a concept that you're trying to prove and something that the customer is like, no way. So POC is the right terminology definition to use. But in most companies, startup or not, mature or not, it will be a proof of value. You're trying to show the customer that what you're selling provides value to their program, company, security stack, whatever it is. At the same time, I will say technical validation, and that's my personal opinion. Technical validation does not come down to actually giving the customer access to the product and hands-on. There are other ways to potentially try and get the technical win, the technical thumbs up, good to go, be it very strong references. And yes, in a early stage startup, you probably don't have those. But if you have customers that are big fans that see value, putting them on the phone with a prospect probably will drive more value than them poking around a UI for 2 weeks with no reason. The other thing, potentially as an alternative of a POV, could be more of a stability performance testing. If we talk about some sort of a deployment, not a SaaS portal, obviously, but some sort of a deployment of an appliance or an agent. In many cases, that's much shorter, to the point kind of engagement, just a few kind of specific, very well-defined success criteria, use cases around that stability performance testing, instead of, providing customer with a month of access to a product without actual framework or goals around that access, and and praying that they will actually poke around and see what they expected to see.
That's interesting. So what I see, and maybe this is happening at Cyber Donut, is they kind of come in and they set up and they give a training, to the evaluators about this is how it works. And then they kind of leave them be for a little bit and say, there you go, test it out kind of thing. From what you're saying, that's not the way to do it, right? If you go to a framework you used or something you give them to make sure that they stay on track and do the work?
Well, I do have a framework that I developed over the years and used across several companies I worked for in the past. And just in a high level, I will say that in general, you need to identify the right timing, not for you, but for the customer, when they can allocate the time. You need to set the boundaries, and don't be afraid to say it's a 2-week POV or a 1-week POV. You know your technology. You know how long it takes to test it. So you need to come with a statement. I'm not saying that if a customer says, "Oh no, I need 2 months," you walk away. No, you can always be flexible, but you should be able to answer the customer how long your POV should take, and guide them through that time period, and make sure that once you decide on a kickoff date, that is when they can allocate the 2 weeks that you suggested. And then it's not about setting up a kickoff and a wrap up in 2 weeks. It's about being constantly in front of them in meetings, in emails, in best practices that you can provide, touch points with different people. Try to have as many evaluators, even if the customer tells you, no, it's just, it's just Alexei here. He's going to evaluate the product. Try to laterally get as many people involved and see that value of the product if you already got into the place where you have to do a POV.
So you'd rather say, let's slow down a little bit at the start and make sure everyone's available, commit the time, and then intense period of time, right? Rather than saying, well, here's the 2-month POV, right? Who knows what they'll do and what they'll remember over those 2 months.
Correct. And it's not about the intensity, or it shouldn't feel intense on the customer side. It should be the right timing for them to actually be able to allocate the attention to the product. Otherwise, hopefully your product is not something that the customer needs to sit 10 hours a day for 7 days just to figure out what's going on, hopefully. But in other cases where it's simple to work and understand the value of the product, it should be something that the customer can take those 2 weeks and allocate enough time, half an hour a day or 10 minutes a day, with your guidance, with you being kind of constantly consulting them, advising them, again, using emails, using different communications, maybe from within the product. Pendo, as example, is a great hidden tool to send messages from within the product. Now, if you have users that actually interact with the product throughout the POV, that's another way to to utilize a tool you have, customer companies have, to interact with a prospect and send quote unquote hidden messages. Oh, you clicked on this. By the way, do this and that, and it will give you more value. But it's staying top of mind. It's not letting the customer get distracted with the million other things they have any point in time, right? Because it's not like, oh, we're only evaluating, I work for Morphisec, only evaluating Morphisec. No, it never happens. Never.
Yeah, I was working with a client recently, and one of the SEs I thought had a good plan or a good idea or a good way of doing this is that he would always get asked about, well, I need 3 weeks or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it might be, right? And what he would do is he would change the conversation to say, well, how long does it actually take to do this testing or this setup, right? So he'd say, look, I'm going to work with you 2 hours to do the setup. Then we'll do 30 minutes on, I don't know, that integration. And then to do with the 5 things you want to test, each of those will take about 45 minutes or half an hour or an hour. So it's much more about, can you find 5 hours over a week or two to get that done? And suddenly it's like, okay, I can do that, right? And they said, well, let's do that, but let's add in an extra little bit for buffer because you might want to bring someone else in. So yeah, I'll give you this amount of time and that should be enough. I really liked how we brought it back to actually what they were going to do as opposed to just defaulting to, well, I need 30 days.
So I love that approach, and we do that as well. And I think for key elements of the POV of your product, you certainly need to identify them and be very guiding in those areas. So for example, deployment, if you need to deploy a product, or integration, if your product includes integration, you're telling your customer very much upfront how much it will take and what needs to happen to make it successful. So let's get on a call. It will take 10 minutes to deploy it. Let's get on a half an hour call to deploy. And here's what you need to prepare to come prepared to that call. When can we get that call so that you come prepared? It's not like you come to the call and, sorry, I don't have an endpoint to deploy an agent. Okay, so back to the drawing board, right? Or same with the integration. I don't have the API keys to the other tool. So, okay, it doesn't have. So basically, you need to be very consultative in terms of what is happening, how long it takes. I love that approach, absolutely, and we do that. And at the end of the day, you want the customer to feel it's easy. You want to almost give it to them on a platter. What we, for instance, offer to our customers and Morphisec today, Morphisec does endpoint security. So testing Morphisec includes sometimes getting like malware samples and pretty sophisticated things that not all customers are comfortable with handling. We offer to almost guide them and provide them the whole thing. We don't give actual malware samples, but we basically handhold them throughout the process of getting the malware that they can test on our product to make sure that the product works and see the value. And it's a very much it's a complex task that we try to make as easy as possible on the customer.
Now, one of the things that happens to everyone is the extending POC or POV, the one more use case before we wrap it up. Any tips about how to handle that so it doesn't become too much of a burden?
I think the reality is it's unavoidable if the customer wants an extension or if they haven't seen something. I think that the key in extensions is to define, again, same as going into POV, define what is causing or what is the reason for that, and what is the framework in terms of time and support that you'll need to provide to make it happen. What I see happening very often is like, oh, I need 2 more weeks. But what is going to happen in those 2 weeks? What is it that you're going to see or want to see in those 2 weeks that you haven't seen in the first 2 weeks? Let's talk about what is it that you're trying to achieve. Now, if in the first 2 weeks that the POV was supposed to be going, nothing happened because the customer got other priorities, then it's a different story. And sometimes it happens. Listen, if there is an incident the customer needs to handle, they will not evaluate new products, right? It's kind of, I think it's fair. So if the initial POV timeframe shifted, that's one type of extension. And I think it's kind of, okay, fine, let's make sure we all understand what we discussed in terms of timeline and scope. And let's try to guide them again. But hopefully, if you do all the things we discussed up until now and guide the customer and make sure that the timing is right and handhold them, you won't get to that type of extension. The other type is, oh, I just want to poke around for 2 more weeks. In that kind of extension, you certainly need to drill down and understand what is it that the customer is not seeing. Very often that happens in bake-offs, in competitive situations. Like, okay, I finished the POV with you. I'm starting a POV with a competitor, but I still want to compare you side by side. And that's often, and that's in that case, he won't be actually doing anything in your product for the most part, probably, but they want to see results. So maybe you can provide some reporting that will help them get the results without having you running the product for 2 more weeks. And the reality is, if that is the case, the number one thing I'll say about extensions is it's a give and get situation. Okay, I'll give you more time, but I need to get something for that time that I'm giving you with a product. Be it if it's a competitive situation, understand more about the competitive aspects of the deal and who is the competitor and how they are performing, etc. Now I'm oversimplifying it. It's an art, right? It's not a kind of simple thing to do, but that's normally what I expect from my team. Is if there is an extension request, fine, but let's put let's put it on the table that we need to get something in return to that additional time with the product.
I like that, right? There's probably lots of different things that you could ask for in return that a reasonable person might think is okay, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I see, Alexei, is, every product has, well, not every product, most products will have some part of it, which is the wow moment, right? This is the bit that we just do so well, right? Not always is it all that amazing first time you look at it, though. And I'm wondering any tips on setting up the POV or working with the the technical team on the prospect side to make sure that bit comes out and is recognized.
And that's difficult. It's a great point, Andrew. You try to control the controllables in a POV, but if you deploy your product in a real customer environment and not in some sort of a lab setup, where in a lab setup you can basically sort of ensure that the wow moment happens because you can provide the environment for that best feature to shine, right? Basically, as example, in a real customer environment, it's difficult, and I think the best you could do is guide the customer through what you know that works best in for your product. But the reality is that customers are customers, and even if they listen, they don't always do what you suggest they do. Normally, they don't, and it's a really good point, and sometimes it is difficult to shine the light on that great great capability. Obviously, your demo should be doing an amazing job in showing that, but then come real life, like, oh, we don't have that specific thing, so it didn't trigger. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the classic example is detection, right? It's like in a demo, you can show it detecting all sorts of stuff. You put it, off a spam port if it's appliance, or you put it in their environment. It's like crickets, right? It's like, well, the good news is you're not infected. There's no breach. The bad news is it's kind of dull when you look at the screen.
Right. And so what we do, and I mentioned that earlier, what we do is we try to guide the customer with almost providing them like an ecosystem that will allow them to test us when they, especially when they tell us that they're like not quite sure how to test the product. It's not always possible. I'm not saying it's always possible, but it's something we strive to do and provide our customers with a framework with very detailed guidance on how to basically what to throw at the product so it shows the value.
Got it. Well, let's say that the evaluation part of the POC, we now fixed it. We've got much better criteria. We're getting the right deals in there. What is the best way at the end of the POV to make sure the right people are read in on the prospect side and get the right information to say, yeah, this went well, here's the proof, and here's what it can do for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it doesn't come down to just one thing. A leftover from a POV is something that I've been trying to get to an amazing state in every company I work for. But the reality is that it has to be very much tailored to every customer, every situation. So you can have like a template for a POV summary. You should have a template for a POV summary, and you should make sure you provide it in every single POV. But it doesn't mean that template will be just plug and play and it will take 5 minutes in every single POV. It does require work. Every customer, every environment, every situation is unique in some way, form, or shape. But that, and you must provide some sort of a leftover, an executive summary, a POV summary, something that shows the value, shines the light, put the spotlight on the best features that hopefully you were able to show during the POV. And then at the same time, my opinion is that the SE work is not done when the POV is done. It might be done when we are, in the last negotiation phases and procurement is already like issuing a PO. Yes, that's when you can kind of say, okay, we're done. But up until then, the SE should stay close, at least to the technical, to the champion, not the economic buyer, and keep providing value, whether it's specific to your product and technology or even sharing, company research. A lot of the companies, even startups, do a lot of internal independent research that is very valuable. You need to make sure that you remain top of mind, your company, your POV, because very often, by the way, and back to your original question, the success rate or the conversion rate from a POV to close one is if you did a POV and it wasn't the right timing because the budget is only next year's cycle budget, customers just forget. And yes, it's difficult to keep and stay top of mind for a year, if that's the time frame we're talking about. But you need to try your best to do that. So maybe not send something every day, because that's a lot of content and collateral to generate. But you need to stay top of mind and make sure the customer remembers who you are, what you do, and how you solve their problem, or how you add to their security stack, their security program, and the value you bring.
That's such a great point, because at that point, I mean, you know so much about what they care about, what happened during the POC or V that they liked, that they latched onto. You know how they're justifying things internally because you're aligning the readout to that. At that point there, you know a lot. You can just say, okay, well, this might be a 3 month or a 6 month delay, but I want to every month reach out with something along these key things that they really value. And if it's a new feature in that area, or a new capability, or a new report, or new data, or new research, or new something, there's your excuse to kind of keep front and center for them, and show that, yes, you are thinking about them.
100%. And even moreover, if there are, for example, very often during a POV, there are some new capabilities the customer or roadmap capabilities the customer requests that might become available in the next 3 months, but they're not available in the POV timeframe. Or sometimes you even go and develop specific things based on the feedback from a POV if you know that it's going to help you close it in the next quarter, right? So you wanna stay top of mind and keep the customer informed that those things happen. You maybe even want to involve them. It's not a customer yet anymore, by the way, just don't forget, it's a prospect, but you may still want to involve them as a design partner to some degree, although you already know what you're gonna deliver, but at least have them read in on what's being developed if it's something that they deemed a meaningful capability throughout your interactions with them.
Now, Alexei, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Tell us about a time where everything just went wrong in the POC.
Oh, it
You
happens all
showed
the
up.
time.
I'm sure it happens more than we might imagine, right?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And listen, I guess same as my expectations that SEs will stay involved post POCs, and my expectation is that SEs remain, or not remain, they are involved in the pre POC phase, in the qualification. Things go wrong all the time. I think if you manage things before and after, then if something goes wrong in the POV, you're in a much better place to manage that situation, to go get through it. But listen, there are cases when there was like major bugs and issues and things didn't work at all, and it's I'm saying that not as an example of my current company, but in any company I work for, it happens. It's software, right?
These things happen. I remember I got two things that happened to me in the past. One, on the IDS side, during a trial, a POC, prospect finds out that they've got a problem. They've literally got things beaconing out from, in those days, from their data center, and is going to countries in the world that it shouldn't be going to. And suddenly it's, people start coming in the room kind of thing. Well, who's this guy? Well, this guy is now the VP of this. And who's this guy? Well, that's the chief whatever. And suddenly very senior people are looking at the screen going, what the heck's going on? And it's kind of interesting. The other one that's really interesting was back in the day, selling DLP. So, one of the things about DLP is you may well find out that there's sensitive data getting exfiltrated from your company by employees. And, a good DLP process actually involves legal, it involves HR, and involves technical validation as well, because often you'll get results coming out saying that employee is doing things that, they shouldn't be doing. And it doesn't always. What I remember, it didn't happen all the time. There were certainly instances where, there was people in the company who were involved after the POV because they found out that these things were happening. Kind of interesting, somehow, the reaches of your technology.
Yeah, I mean, I have examples from different realm of cybersecurity, but similar situations with threat intelligence, where you often find some small thing on the dark web, someone selling access to a company, and you go and you happen to be talking to that customer, or during a POV, some finding comes up, and suddenly they go quiet. It's like, oh, what happened? What did I do? And apparently you hit the button that, like, or the CEO social security number offer for sale on some marketplace, or some data that was leaked, identified by a product. And it's interesting to see some customers react to that as like, oh, I actually don't want to know about it, maybe. Because if I know about it, now I need to do something about it. Up until 5 minutes ago, I didn't know about it. So now it's a problem. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it happens more often than not. Well, Alexei, this has been great. Thanks you for joining us to advise the Cyber Donut exec team on how to do this. As a big thank you, you'll get some Cyber Donut swag. You're going to have to save Cyber Donut t-shirt coming your way as full payment for your extensive advice and knowledge built up over these years. If someone wants to get in touch, is LinkedIn the best way to get hold of you?
Yes, LinkedIn is the best way to contact me. Thank you very much for having me, Andrew. I enjoyed the conversation. It's great. Great podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.